feasible. We've been 40 years without a major war and 40 years without a second use of nuclear weapons. But do you want to bet 1,000 years or 100 years that there will be no more use of nuclear weapons? You want to find a way to change that strategy. That was President Reagan's vision. But he picked ways to do it which are currently technically infeasible and which currently make lousy strategy.
Well, if the SDI is technically not feasible, why does it have the Russians in such a tizzy?
Get asked that all the time. To begin with, they're a little bit afraid of us, and they've seen that our technology can do an awful lot of things that they didn't expect. So that they've got this 1% worry that maybe the Amerikanskis will come up with something that works. Maybe they won't. If we start down the SDI road, they have to start down the countermeasures road. That's very expensive for them. It's less expensive than SDI, but they can afford it less well than we can afford to waste money. Although with our current deficits, it's not clear we can afford to waste much money either.
You feel that we can afford it more so than they can?
I think as a general rule, our economy is in better shape than theirs. I mean, I wouldn't trade our economy for their economy anytime.
Will the SDI violate the ABM Treaty?
Of course. It must. The ABM Treaty's first article says you will not deploy a territorial defense. The SDI is designed and intended to defend the territory of the United States, not simply a local region the way the ABM Treaty permits.
Well, how about looking at the Russian defense setup? Don't they have one similar to ours? And as a matter of fact, talking about SDI, it has been reported that the Russians already have a workable SDI.
That's nonsense. That's absolute, total nonsense.
How can we be sure?
I can't answer that question. You'll have to take my word for it.
On what do you base that?
You'll have to take my word for it. Can we stop the camera for a minute?
Well, tell me on camera, if you would, there hasn't been any evidence of testing, or?
There has been no evidence of testing of anything resembling a national territorial defense. There is no evidence that they have an integrated program headed by a multi-starred general with high national priorities. Certainly they are doing research. Of course they are doing research on many technologies just as we are and just as we should and just as they should. But they do not have this program with the national goal established by the leader of the country of making nuclear weapons impotent and obsolete, as if that could ever be done, and of providing a shield above their country.
When we ask you questions, we don't want to ask anything that might be of a confidential nature. You know,
The instant you ask, how do I know, I have to be very quiet,
sure.
Because I do know.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to reveal sources, but give us generally on what you would base that decision.
I mean, I've had access to intelligence information of the United States when I worked for the Arms Control Agency.
So would that follow through then, that those who are in favor of the SDI project are using this as a propaganda ploy?
I think they're distorting information.
The SDI project has almost been single-handedly pushed by the present administration.
By no other administration.
Right. And single-handedly by the president himself.
By no other president.
What do you think will happen to the SDI project when we have a new administration, whether it be Republican or Democrat? Looking at the candidates.
I think you have to look at the next 2 years, and you have to look at the options available to this administration in the next 2 years. There are a couple of things that they could do. The morning paper, the Ball State paper, says that they're defending a decision to decide to deploy early. Such a decision is strategically bankrupt because the system they want to deploy is neither effective nor survivable nor cost-effective at the margin. It fails all the criteria that were established for an effective defense. But it is effective on one thing. It will knock out the possibility of future ABM controls. It will rupture the ABM treaty. So if this administration goes ahead with a decision for early deployment and takes steps which are irrevocable, that is, tests a realistic system so that the Soviets respond, then the next administration is absolutely locked into continuation of some kind of defense, or at least is locked out of the ABM treaty. The well will be poisoned for at least a decade.
Do you think a system could be put in place within, well, it is now less than 2 years?
No, but a system cannot be put into place. But certain tests could probably be done, and those tests would so contravene Article 6 and Article 5 of the ABM treaty that there would be little likelihood that the Soviets would accept even the pledge of a new administration that we were going back. You cannot unlearn information once learned, and the object of a test ban is to prevent you from learning information.
How about Congress? How far can the administration go without further congressional approval?
Not a lot farther. They can abrogate the ABM treaty. That's very easy. That's a stroke of a pen. There's a review conference on the ABM treaty, probably this fall, probably in October, but no date's been set that I know of. At that review conference with the Soviet Union, they could put some unacceptable demands forward to the Soviets, and when the Soviets don't accept them, we could turn around and say, well, our supreme national interest is jeopardized, the 6-month abrogation clock is running, and we'll be out in October plus 6 months.
We're committed scientifically and financially. How much money has gone into this SDI project, and how much is proposed?
Well, it depends upon whom you ask. I rather suspect that we've spent something on the order of $7 or $8 or $10 billion since March of 1983. Some of that would have been spent anyway and should be spent. I mean, there's no argument that a certain amount of that research needs to go on. If you ask how much a system deployed will cost, you get a lowball figure of about $100 billion or 125 for the Weinberger kinetic kill vehicles in orbit system. If you take into account that the administration doesn't get the last move, there is no last move in this kind of a chess game, and the Soviets have responses and can respond to the system that we want to deploy in ways to make our system not work as well. Once you take that into account, the simplest Soviet deployment, if countered by the U.S., in other words, if we throw good money after bad, will cost 25 or more times as much as the original investment of $100 billion. So something on the order of $1 trillion or a couple of $1 trillion for a system effective against first-step Soviet countermeasures.
You're talking those figures, you're talking money that could bankrupt the country.
Yes. No question about it. I mean, we're back into Ev Dirksen's game, a billion here, a billion there, soon it's real money, except that it's become $1 trillion instead of $1 billion for the SDI program.